Hi, everybody. My name is Zeke Torres, and I'm here with PROC Gossip. And this gossip episode is about pharmasug. And so my two guests today are Nancy Brucken and Richard Allen. Both of you, thank you for joining us. And let me tell everybody a little bit about Nancy and then a little bit about Richard. So Nancy is a longtime avid SaaS user, and she comes from Michigan, and she's been part of the success of the Michigan SaaS Users Group and then the Midwest SaaS Users Group. So her local is the Michigan SaaS Users Group, and then the regional would be the Midwest. And she is a big, important part of the history and the success of both of those groups. Richard is from the West. So Richard, you're from Denver, so you represent the Denver SaaS Users Group. And then your regional history is in the Western Users of SaaS, the WUS group, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us. And this episode is about pharmasug. And I'm excited to hear about, some of the things that happened in 2020 and how it probably disrupted your group in one of the weirdest ways at the beginning of COVID. And then maybe tell us what's coming up with 2021. But before we get into that, I really want to find out, Nancy, what made you get started with SaaS user groups in the first place, right? Some of the users that are new to this stuff don't even know why it's important to get involved in user groups. Why did you get involved with user groups, and what had you started with either Midwest, or what's your history with them?
Well, actually, I went to the very first Michigan SaaS users group meeting back in, 1989, 1990.
You were like
Just because
15 years old right there or something like that?
Yeah, just about. Yeah, it was at a building not far from the building I was working in, and I was curious. And my company had actually sent me to what was Suji the year before.
Okay,
where
and
I
for those
spent
that don't know, Suji is the SaaS
precursor to
Users
Global
Group
Forum.
International, and
Yeah.
it got rebranded into SaaS Global Forum. But that,
Yeah, where I spent 2.5 days wandering around lost. So I figured, the local user group would be a little smaller, and then I got drafted to be a webmaster because I knew a little bit of HTML for the conference that they hosted in Detroit. And yeah, just it's been a good group of people to work with. And I ended up helping out with pharmasug because they had a birds of a feather planning session. I'd gone to pharmasug, I had a paper accepted, so I got to go and, wandered by the room where they were, meeting to discuss volunteer opportunities, whatever, for the following year. I figured, what the heck, my chances of getting to go were probably not very good, but I could,
and let me guess, they had plenty of beer. They had plenty of beer and food there, and that's why you walked into the room, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so the next year I got made a section chair, and the rest is history, I guess.
Wow, awesome. So Richard, what about you? Tell us a little bit about your history with SaaS users groups. What motivated you to jump into them? And
Well, geez, a long time ago, when I was back living in Little Rock, I got involved originally with the Central Arkansas SaaS users group and was part of that. Then after I moved to Colorado, I started going to pharmasug, probably about 1996, 97, somewhere around there. And just like Nancy, one year I kind of was hanging around with a couple people, and they said, "Oh, we're going to go over to the meeting for organizing next year's event, and you might want to come and maybe volunteer and get involved." And that's where I started. It was like 1999 in New Orleans. And ever since then, I've been involved with pharmasug as section chair, starting off with, became academic chair in 2003, been the operations chair twice before this, in 2007, 2012, and now back again here this year in 2021. So,
and I think one of the important parts about pharmasug is it is now in independent. It's like syntax independent, but its history is a SaaS-based syntax group. And at one point, it was considered part of the umbrella of the SaaS regional groups. It was like a industry focus group, right? But that transitioned, and so you've had your group has taken a different pathway than a typical regional group.
We had to, because as an industry base, there's so much other software in addition to SaaS being used in the industry. Sure. And if we limited ourselves to SaaS, we were going to just limit our audience. And so we had to
Mhm.
allow presentations on other software because there's large pockets of our users and Python users, for example.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And we needed to address their needs too.
Yeah.
So now your group has for a few years now made that transition. And so when somebody says pharmasug, even though the S is there, we're talking about a group that meets and has a wide variety of syntax and a wide variety of presentations. Richard, tell us about those. What does somebody get when they go to pharmasug?
Well, let me first say that it's the pharmasug. This S is actually now software rather than just SaaS. So we have any of the software packages that we can use that Nancy talked about earlier. Yes, and we have presentations on all of them. We have vendors in the exhibit area typically for each of the packages. R usually comes to our conference and has a booth. Python, I don't think we've seen them yet, but we're open to,
Sure.
to any software
And there's
provider.
plenty of papers, and there's
Yeah,
Python
plenty
papers,
of
and Python
papers,
in a
right.
workshop,
But
in a seminar.
but I'm just, yeah, their presence is there, and there's a lot of alternative to SaaS, which we think is good.
Yeah, no, and I think I think everybody understands that, right?
Yeah.
When you talk to SaaS user leadership, everybody knows there's other competitors to the work that SaaS typically does, SaaS syntax typically does. And there's a lot of room for incorporating some new ideas and fresh perspectives. And I think a lot of groups are doing that, but your group was really one of the first ones to say, we have to. And I acknowledge that and I admire that. I think it was really brave, back
Yeah.
what's been maybe like 5 years now, maybe a
Been
little bit
about 5 years or so. I think that one of the driving factors too was that we were having a hard time recruiting FDA speakers, which is very important for our conference because they considered us to be software centric to SaaS and not allowing other software vendors to come in. So I think that, they absolutely we needed to do it. It was something that we needed to do. We had to go independent so we could recruit FDA better and have a better relationship with them and have more of the speakers and panel discussions involved with the things that we actually work with.
So then I want to ask about that. When we talk about pharma, it doesn't necessarily mean pharma. It could be the spectrum of
healthcare
food,
related
health,
to
insurance.
We
right?
also have a track, and we've had it for years for outcomes type research. So for anybody that's kind of working in the claims-based area, which I've done a little bit myself, we have that option for people to present their outcomes research papers or things involved with dealing with large claims databases in more efficient manners and things like that.
So that's one of the things I admire about the pharmasug history and where it's at today is that I think you've kept the SaaS user group peer-to-peer methodology for papers, but you've allowed the syntax diversity, right? So you kind of have the best of both worlds in some ways, right? Where there's still that camaraderie of the SaaS user group. If you can volunteer, we need you. We're not going to turn you away. There's beer and food over there. Pull up your sleeves. Let's get to work. Or you have a presentation. Yeah. Is it good? It's got words typed in it and it sounds all right. We're going to take it.
Well, we're a little more selective. But
I know.
Yeah, definitely more selective.
I would expect your volunteer, chair section leaders are gonna be kind of saying, don't let Zeke say that. we do pay attention. We do read this stuff. But let's talk about this next part. I mean, there are people who may be pondering submitting a paper or writing a paper. Why would they submit it to pharmasug, or what is the attributes of somebody who would be ideal to submit a paper to pharmasug? Like, what are you looking for when you want a paper to be submitted to your conference? What does that look like to your team?
To me personally, it's got to have a point to it. Why are you writing it? What are you trying to get across? And how can I use it in my job? convince me, even if I, it's not directly related, what can I take away from it? Because the goal is, for everybody who attends the conference, they come back with at least one or two things that they can take and start using right away.
Yeah.
And so we try to, at least I know, I try to communicate that to the section chairs, this is what we're looking for. Is it something that somebody can take back and implement? And maybe not right away, maybe in 6 months or a year or something, but it's does it have enough detail?
Sure.
Things that drive me nuts are programs about somebody's macro that shows how you call it, but that's it.
Yeah.
And then they tell you, oh, by the way, we can't share the code, it's proprietary. Well, that doesn't do me any good,
Yeah.
Okay, I've got the idea, but it's going to take
Yeah.
me a while to develop it, share your ideas.
Yep. Richard, what about you? What if you're as you are in charge of the conference, but as you lead the team and tell them what criteria to have for somebody who's out there pondering to write a paper, what ideas do you want them to share with you that you think your conference needs or your team should be looking at?
We're always looking for novel ways to, program in the clinical area. I think that's something that we like to look at. I myself have learned a lot from the pharmasug papers. I've learned from Nancy. She's had some very good papers on, let's say, the DOW loop, which is something that I use a lot, and I learned that from Nancy. And there's a lot of people that talk about it on SASL, but there are some papers I like to see people present things on that, and some of the hash-up methods and some things that come into newer type of methods for handling programming a little bit easier. I'd like to see some of that.
Okay. Well, now you mentioned SASL, so we got to be fair to people. There's going to be people who are going to be looking up this acronym and going nuts. So for the benefit of those users out there who are trying to figure out what a SASL is, this is a listserv type of thread email enabled messaging system that is hosted by the University of Georgia, right? And if you find it, it is by the University of Georgia. And if you subscribe to it, you will get a lot of emails about questions and answers that people pass back and forth. It is very helpful. It is the precursor to Stack Overflow. So you're going to look at this thing and be like, why am I getting all these Q&As and emails this way? So you have to be very careful. I encourage people to look at it, and I encourage people to subscribe to it, but I warn people to put on the right email filter so it goes into the right folder, because there's a lot of chatter there.
Spend all day reading through it.
Well,
Yeah, sometimes
it
it's
has
slow,
slowed
sometimes
down
it's
quite
busy.
a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I still think that the diehard true SaaS techies are in that
Yeah.
listserv.
Yes.
And it is an amazing forum that predates, it goes back a lot in time.
What predates the SaaS communities? That's kind of, that's been the newer incarnation.
I learned about it in like 1994, and I think it was around for 4 or 5 years before that. So it's been around, and it was for the longest time it was the best resource for that type of learning. But now there's others, and it's kind of slowed down, but there are still some good input.
Well, I think there's a lot of gems in there that people
still
never...
good things that you gotta watch. You just kind of look around and you find something that might be useful in your area. Pick it up and use it and modify it for your own purposes.
And again, to the listeners or the people watching this, it is like Stack Overflow with all the fancy GUI looking stuff. It's just raw Q&A messages back and forth. Really, really cool. But it doesn't look as glitzy as like Stack Overflow or some kind of modern web version of something, but good info. So back to pharmasug. You had probably one of the weirdest situations, very hectic, with 2020 as COVID was spreading out last spring, because pharmasug is in the spring. How did that go? What were you guys thinking? How did the team adapt? That must have been a really strange and hectic time for your team. Tell us about it.
Well, it was just about 2.5 months before our conference date when things started shutting down. And then the writing was on the wall. We knew we were pretty much not going to be able to do a in-person conference. So we had to right away start negotiating with the hotel that we already had a contract with. We were planning to do in-person conference right up until probably the end of March. And at that point in time, we switched and we negotiated with the hotel to move the conference out a few years at San Francisco. It was supposed to be in San Francisco in 2020. We moved it out to 2023.
Mhm.
So we'll be there in 2023. And we had a couple of presentations that we had virtually. It wasn't.
We moved everything online. Yeah, we ran a whole series.
Right.
Yeah, June and July, we ran a whole series twice a week, basically 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern.
I remember that. I admired the fact that the team didn't give up. I mean,
Well, we had all those papers.
Yeah.
People wanted to present, so we gave them
No. Look, I gotta say thank you to your team and job well done to the 2020 team, right? Because who would have thought this is what's going to happen to us? I know as conference leaders, there's a lot of contingencies that are planned for.
That was not one.
Yeah, that was
not one we planned for. But
there was no playbook for that. I mean,
no.
I know in regional meetings or other meetings, we sit down and we have conversations. Well, if it rains or if the hotel shuts down or the catering goes out of way, there's a lot of stuff we plan for. Nobody planned for a pandemic. And when your conference is 2 months or a month ahead of it, what are you going to do? The fact that your team still regrouped a few months later, June, and then you started having your virtual series. Good job.
We'll have to admit that wasn't Nancy and I. We had another team.
Yeah, that was
very, very capable leaders. We had it was Craig Breledge and Gary Moore were the two conference chairs last year, and those two were the ones that really drove this and got the the virtual event going.
Yeah, and I think it's a new dimension of how conferences are going to be held in the future. There's going to be a component of web or virtual to some extent, right? Every conference is going to be a little bit different, but I think that's another place where your group was one of the firsts to handle a situation and show everybody else how it could be done, which is cool. So kudos to that.
Well, this
So
year
now
we've
we're in
gone
2020.
virtual. Yeah, you segued into it.
Yeah.
We are virtual.
Now here we are. You figured it out last year. So we're in 2021. This is your conference. I'm excited. I already registered. What's coming up? Tell us about what your team has for us and what we should look out for and be excited about.
Well, instead of, just, a thrown together, buy a Zoom license and present webinars, we've actually got a full-fledged virtual conference package this year. So we'll be it'll still be recorded presentations with a live Q&A, but we're running 4 parallel tracks. We're running hands-on workshops. We actually have that working with SAS and several other, our studio in Python. We've got hands-on workshops on. We'll have a virtual exhibit hall. So we've got exhibitors signing in and you can, wander through the booths and talk to exhibitors. We're doing Think Tank, which is, our equivalent of code doctors. So you can, we were hashing out some of the details with the conference software provider this afternoon. You can, we'll have the Think Tank lifeguards, assigned to slots and you can wander by their booth or their chair, as you will. If you have particular questions, we'll publish it with their areas of expertise and, when they're on duty and, bring your code. You can go off in a private Zoom room and, share your screen, show them what you're working on and where the problems are. And, you obviously don't show them any proprietary data, but you can let them into your environment, so to speak, and show them where your code is breaking.
Wow. Yeah, and we also have a couple of water cooler chats, we call them. We've had a couple of years. We're going to put those, outside of the presentation windows where people can kind of just informally drop by and listen to a particular topic. We've also got
we've got panel discussions. We'll have we'll have 4 or 5 FDA speakers lined up to give a block of presentations.
Are they going to give us samples?
No,
No, probably not.
no,
We're
sorry.
also planning on having some evening activities for the attendees. We're working on having
Trivia?
a trivia event, and we're maybe looking at some other possibilities. But we're pretty certain we're going to have at least a trivia event one of the 3 nights.
It really,
Oh, one more thing too.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
There's a
You
lot
have
of
many
stuff.
more things.
Yeah, no, Patty Compton from Pfizer is going to be our
Oh,
keynote speaker
yes.
on Monday.
Yes.
She's head of the stat programming group at Pfizer and is going to talk about some of the lessons they've learned from the vaccine studies that they had to run in a hurry, over the last year.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And honestly, it sounds like a really exciting conference ahead, and it's upon us. I mean, it's April 12th. We're recording this, and I
yeah.
mean, registration is now. Tell us the dates that people need to be aware of right now for 2021, right? For the conference. If anybody else ignored every part of this presentation, this is the part you need to pay attention to. What are the dates that are really important for people right now for this conference?
Registration, the early registration for, to get a discounted rate of $125 off the normal registration fee is closing on the 19th, which would be a week from today. So it's kind of a hurry there. If you want to get the discount, then you'll need to register within the next week. Couple other important dates. We will be opening up the website on the 17th to the attendees so that they can go in to the virtual platform and start, kind of learning their way around and to set up their agendas. And the conference itself is going to be run May 24th through May 27th.
and then the week after that, we're running three seminars.
There's 3 seminars.
Yeah.
And we'll also have seminars throughout the year, something different, because usually at a conference we'll have 10 to 12 seminars. But with the virtual platform, that was a little hard to do all at one time. So we decided we'll do 3 of them right after the conference the next week, and then spread the rest of them throughout the year. So
yeah, that makes sense. And you can't, I mean, with everything you've got planned for that conference date, I mean, what are you going to possibly squeeze in without driving everybody nuts to try and get it all in? I mean,
yeah, that's something you have to think about for sure.
It's a lot. You get a lot for what you're paying for a registration. I mean, that's a pretty value-packed conference experience there.
And if you sign up for the conference, the seminars are half off.
Nice.
So if you register for the conference, you can take as many seminars as you want, and they're $125 each.
And one other nice thing about this virtual platform is if you do sign up for the conference, all the presentations are going to be available for a year. So you can go back anytime over the next year and review any of the presentations that you thought was useful, and look over it again, and find whatever you need. It's always going to be available. Just go back and rewind it and replay it.
Cool. So this is a unique thing about pharmasug, which is part of its history, is that it's in the spring, and the standard or the other SAS regionals are in the fall. But that means that your timeline for the year for 2022, if people want to have it on their radar, you don't look out for it in the fall. You kind of look out for it differently. When does somebody, if they want to be an author or a speaker for 2022, ballpark for us what the tentative dates are that somebody should be looking out for this? I mean, for sure you want to register on the pharmasug website so that you get the alerts in a timely fashion. But okay, people are going to ignore the advice that we tell them. When should they be aware of call for papers? What does that timing look like for pharmasug? Because it's
usually
a little bit different.
October to January. Usually it opens somewhere around October, and usually we end up running it through over the holidays because nobody gets their papers done before the holidays, and usually a week or two after the beginning of January, because nobody gets it done over the holidays. They wait until afterwards.
Yeah, so it's usually about mid-October to mid-January for the call for papers. Registration typically opens in early February. This year, I think we're a little late because we're working on the platform.
Yeah, next year's dates, it's in Austin. We are going to, our plan at this point is to hold at least, part of it in person in Austin.
But wait, hang on here.
Uh,
One of the distinct things about pharmasug is that you have a component that actually meets and gathers in Asia.
Yes.
yes.
You're
Two-
not just
Shanghai in August, and Tokyo was Shanghai's in person. They're still aiming for it's August 27th and 28th, I think.
Yeah, they're hoping to be live. We're probably not going to get a whole lot of people outside of China involved in it, which in the last couple of years we have 15 or 20 people from the U.S. or Great Britain or other countries. The Japan conference is relatively new, but yes, it's going pretty strong. It's going to be in the probably September, October time frame.
In Tokyo.
In Tokyo. We're working on, I think that's going to be virtual this year, though. They talked about being virtual Japan and running a hands-on workshop with it as well. And we've been trying to get an event organized in India as well, but COVID has intervened and we've had some problems getting it up and running, but we definitely will be doing that sometime in the future.
Yeah, Bangalore.
Yeah.
Okay. So then again, back to 2022, Austin, and like you said, it's going to be some in-person component, web, virtual, but it seems like 2021 is still the one we got to be excited about here and get that one done. So a lot of exciting stuff there. What else should users be aware of here? What do we close with to let them know that's important about pharmasug that you would like to tell them?
Well, we've got about 160 papers that we're planning to present. Papers, hands-on workshops, and e-posters. So, and the hands-on workshops will be live. We've got people from SAS actually working out the details with SAS on demand.
Wow, that is pretty good.
So the people, conference attendees can open up the Zoom session and log in. We'll provide they'll need to register, get credentials, and we'll have login instructions. So it's all browser based. They don't have to download anything to their company laptops to participate in those.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And our exhibit room is, of course, it's always nice when we have it at the conference because it's a fairly large exhibit room. We usually have 50 or 60 vendors in there. I'm sure it's not going to be that big on the virtual event. We haven't got all of our people to sign on yet, but we'll have an area where people can go visit with the sponsors and exhibitors and talk to them or make arrangements to schedule a talk with them at certain times. It's going to be, I think, a pretty nice interface, as best we can do in a virtual event. We're
and
trying
it is an
as hard as
actual
we can.
graphical interface. I mean, you're virtually wandering through an exhibit hall.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And the exhibitors can will have booths that they can set up and post their materials, and you can talk one-on-one with their booths, their booth sitters, booth representatives. Yeah. So it's as close to the real thing as we can get.
I know. I guess I'll be in charge of the beer for myself. Kind of
Well,
everybody's going to have a hand their own
refreshments.
Yep. Well, listen, I want to thank you both for taking time out of your day to share with me, things about your team and what's happening with pharmasug. I appreciate it. On behalf of the SAS users that are watching this, thank you. But also other syntax users, right, that are interested in learning about pharmasug. So on behalf of all those, thank you very much for sharing all this. And have a great conference. I'm excited. I'm registered. And
Cool.
let's see if we can get together again soon, safely in Austin, okay?
Yes, we hope so.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity tonight, Zeke.
Yes, thank you, Zeke. This was well worth the time. Thank you for organizing.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you both.